Due to copyright, I can't publish many audiobooks on YouTube. At our audiobook novel service, we offer access to over 300 full novels from Pocket FM, Webnovel, Audible, Wuxia, and more, all in high-quality audio format. Each novel is available with a one-time payment only. No subscriptions, no monthly payment, and no ads. Payments via PayPal or Ko-fi. To browse the full list of available novels, message me directly on Telegram or WhatsApp, or check out our full catalog on Discord. Chapter 151. The Battle to Reclaim Alverton. When the three lords led their warriors into the western gates, they saw a large number of orc warriors coming toward them. Seeing the aggressive beasts approaching them, the warriors felt uneasy. "Don't be afraid. We also have elite knights in our midst," Lord Ermac shouted when he noticed the soldiers' anxiety. He then nodded to the two lords next to him. "My lords, we can't lose face here with everyone watching us. We must show them that we aren't pushovers." Lord Elvin and Lord Reno nodded with grim faces. With a tacit understanding, they sent an elite knight each to lead the charge. "Kill the orcs! Charge!" The two sides clashed soon afterward, and a bloody battle followed. With three elite knights leading them, the army of the three lords took the upper hand right from the start. The sounds of weapons colliding, the cries of the warriors, and the roars of the orcs echoed across the streets of the town where the battle was taking place. "They are doing much better than I thought," remarked Alaric, who was watching the fight from the high ground. William nodded in agreement with his words. "They are after all warriors of the north," he said with a faint smile. The northern part of Estania faced the enchanted woodlands, which was the home of countless ferocious beasts and many enemy species. Other than this dangerous forest, there was also the barren land called Snake Valley, where scattered tribes of barbarians had built their homes. Because of these factors, the north always experienced attacks. This made the warriors of the northern houses more experienced in battle. The three lords didn't embarrass themselves. Under their leadership, they destroyed the hundreds of orc warriors, leaving the streets near the western gates of the town drenched in blood. Lord Ermac, who was covered in blood, turned his head, looking for Fredrin's team in the crowd. After seeing them, he let out a triumphant smile. Sensing his gaze, Fredrin nodded, expressing his acknowledgement of their victory. "You have done well, my lords." His team also participated in the battle, but they didn't actively fight. They just cleaned up the orc warriors that came their way. According to Lord Alaric, all spoils gained from this battle will be divided between you three. We won't be taking anything, including what we could get from the orc generals," he added. His words made the faces of the three lords light up. "Are you saying that we can take everything, even the beast soul crystals of the orc generals?" Lord Elvin inquired with an inquisitive look. "That's right," Fredrin nodded. Hearing his confirmation, the three lords were excited. The beast soul crystals of the orc generals were valuable, and just one piece could help a peak knight have a higher chance of advancing to the next realm. Just the thought of it made them excited. Knowing that everything would be distributed between them, the three lords energetically searched for the remaining orcs scattered in the town. However, their enthusiasm was cut short when four large beasts came into view. Orc generals! The three lords were horrified upon seeing the towering creatures. Even the elite knights under their command halted, their faces unsightly to behold. Just then, a calm voice resonated in their ears. "My lords, please take care of the orc warriors. We will handle the orc generals." Fredrin's team rode forward. They remained calm in the face of those monsters, a stark contrast to the nervous warriors under their command. Without waiting for their response, Fredrin raised his sword and shouted, "My brothers, our targets are here. Don't let them get away. Charge!" Fredrin kicked his horse, making it neigh before bolting forward. Arthur and the 15 knights also urged their horses to move, closely following behind Fredrin, who was acting as the vanguard. At this moment, the orc warriors suddenly threw a rain of javelins at them. "Su! Su! 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 Su!" Seeing this, Fredrin snorted. He raised his shield to the left side of his head as he swung his sword. Swoosh! Multiple javelins broke apart after that one swing. Meanwhile, Arthur and the knights weren't idle. They also deflected the javelins coming their way with a few swings of their swords. Swoosh! Swoosh! Pa! 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 The small team's momentum didn't slow down and they continued charging toward the orc generals. Some orc warriors tried to stop them, but they were effortlessly killed. In the next moment, Fredrin's team killed their way through into the orcs' flimsy formation, carving a straight path toward their targets. The 4 orc generals were enraged after witnessing the death of their brethren. They lifted their huge weapons and roared while charging toward Fredrin's team. Roar! The ground seemed to tremble as the 4 large monsters moved with heavy strides. Clang! Fredrin blocked an axe-wielding orc general, causing a violent clang that made everyone's ears itchy. Soon, a fierce battle broke out between the 4 orc generals and Fredrin's small team. To the surprise of the 3 lords, Fredrin's team actually managed to hold off the 4 violent creatures. What made them even more surprised was Fredrin himself. The man was like an immovable fortress, casually blocking the attacks that could even kill a knight. What incredible defense! Lord Elvin exclaimed without bothering to hide his admiration. Stop the chit-chat and focus on our task, Lord Ermac reminded him with a snort. Meanwhile, outside the town, the audience had increased. Other than Alaric and William, the lords also came to watch the show. They were stunned by the battle prowess of Fredrin's team. There were only 17 of them, but their presence was a huge factor in the battle. The warriors under the 3 houses felt no pressure since the most fearsome enemies were being held back by these men. Nathan approached Alaric and whispered, "My lord, is that Sir Fredrin? I heard about him from my brother, Jared." The sharp-eared lords listened closely, showing great curiosity about the elite knight. Amen. Alaric hummed in response. Chapter 152, Orc Subjugation 2. Although these lords also had elite knights in their houses, with some of them even having more than 2, they weren't as powerful as Fredrin. If only he wasn't serving Alaric, some of them would have considered hiring him to their houses. "By the way, how is Sir Jared doing, my lord?" Alaric asked while looking at Nathan. This guy would be his future father-in-law, so he wanted to maintain a good relationship with him. Nathan smiled and replied, "He is doing well now. That guy is tough, so you don't have to worry about him. He should be back to his best form in a couple more weeks." "I see. I'm glad to hear that. Once this is over, I will visit Ryvad to propose marriage to your daughter." He felt that it was the perfect time. He didn't want to make Hershey wait for too long. Nathan didn't expect him to bring this up at this moment, but he was overjoyed. Their 2 houses had already confirmed their mutual interest in the marriage between Alaric and Hershey. All that was left was for Alaric to propose. Nathan didn't expect it to come so soon. "Then I will bring the good news to Hershey once I return home." Ha ha ha! He laughed heartily. Alaric was the perfect son-in-law that he was looking for. He had the background, the strength, and even the looks. Finding someone like him would be difficult. The lords cast envious gazes at Baron Nathan. Meanwhile, the battle within Alverton was slowly coming to an end. At this moment, only slightly over 100 orc warriors were left, and of the 4 orc generals, 2 had already been killed. "Let's wrap up this battle," Fredrin shouted as he jumped off his horse. He then led his team to charge toward the 2 exhausted orc generals. The orc generals' movements had noticeably slowed down after having their stamina almost depleted, but despite the significant reduction in their speed, their power was still strong enough to create a large hole in the ground. Boom! 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 They weren't able to hit the nimble warriors led by Fredrin, but they caused massive destruction to the streets of the town. Some nearby buildings were also dismantled after being struck by their large weapons. Soon, another orc general fell after having its neck stabbed by Arthur, leaving it writhing on the ground as it slowly bled to death. The last orc general was the strongest of the 4, but with the combined force of Fredrin's team, more and more wounds appeared on its towering body, which gradually weakened the fearsome monster. In another half a minute, the monster fell to its knees with a thud. Thud. "Now!" Fredrin lunged at the weary beast and plunged his sword deeply into its chest. The orc general lifted its head and weakly stared at him before it collapsed to the ground. Bang! The ground trembled as the huge beast fell. Fredrin pulled out his sword and looked at the situation. There were only 50 orc warriors left, while the three lords still had over 120 warriors. Seeing that they had already killed the orc generals, the warriors were invigorated and their morale soared. It only took them less than 15 minutes to kill the remaining orc warriors. We won! Victory! Everyone raised their weapons while triumphantly cheering. The battle went a lot easier than they had imagined, and they knew that it was largely because of Fredrin's 17-man team. If it weren't for them, the battle would have ended differently. We can celebrate later. Collect the loot, Lord Ermac eagerly shouted. His raucous laughter echoed through the streets of the town. Lord Elvin and Lord Reno also excitedly instructed their men to collect the spoils. The battle seems to be over now, William remarked when he heard the celebratory shouts of the warriors inside the town. Everyone nodded at his words. Everyone, let's go back to the camp and gather our soldiers. It's about time to attack that orc settlement. Alaric's calm voice suddenly drifted into their ears. Hearing this, the lords furrowed their eyes. Yes, my lord. They didn't linger any further and quickly left to gather their men. Undersir. Mission, Orc Subjugation 2. Mission difficulty, hard. Now that you have gathered enough men, head to the orc settlement and destroy it. Rewards, 800 battle points, 40 XP, 40 stat points, equipment upgrade card X1, random trait card X1. Undersir. Another hard mission. Alaric squinted his eyes upon seeing the system prompt. He then closed the cyan screen and headed to the camp to make his preparations. An hour later, the 1,000-man army began their march. The snow was starting to melt as spring approached. Now that a large portion of the snow had melted, the group marched unhindered. I see someone coming. Argus frowned as he stared in the distance. With his enhanced vision, he saw a few men coming toward them. Upon hearing his voice, the warriors subconsciously grabbed the handle of their weapons. Wait! They are allies! Alaric raised his hand, signaling to the warriors to keep calm. Earlier, he sent a separate force to eliminate the patrolling orc warriors in the forest beyond Alverton, ensuring that the beasts at the orc settlement would remain unaware that they were coming. Soon, 11 men came into view, and leading them was a familiar face. It was the warrior who had always been with Lucas from the start and was now the current commander of House Silversword's armed guards. It was Warwick. My lord, I have come to give my report. Warwick saluted respectfully. After getting the Orc Lord's Beast Soul Crystal from Alaric, he had successfully advanced and became the third Transcendent Knight of House Silversword. However, his breakthrough hadn't been publicized yet. Speak. Alaric nodded. My lord, we have completed our task. All the orc scouts have been killed without any accidents. Warwick reported. Alaric smiled faintly. Good. You can follow us now. Yes, my lord. Chapter 153. Battle Inside the Cavern. Alaric Silversword, Elite Knight, EXP. 72. 102/1000. Potential A. Traits: Horseback Riding C. Swordsmanship SSS. Close Combat C. Archery F. Hunting E. Tracking E. Sixth Sense E. Monster Affinity F. Mana Gathering C. Strength 150. Stamina 150. Agility 150. Vitality 150. Endurance 150. Mana 167. 174. Battle points 480. 980. Stat points 114. 144. Requirements for the next advancement: 1000 EXP, 250 in all attributes, and 10,000 battle points. He wasn't able to complete the daily mission in the past 2 days since he couldn't find the time to train, but he wasn't too disheartened. He could make up for the loss once he cleared the ongoing mission. Do you want to use the random trait upgrade card? Yes. No. Alaric decided to use the card now. Please upgrade something that can help me. He silently prayed in his heart as he clicked. Yes. Your trait Archery, F, has been upgraded to Archery, E. Alaric's face darkened when he saw the system notification. He then closed the sign screen with a thought. Archery. I don't even have a bow with me. He could only smile bitterly. There was nothing he could do. The random trait card was entirely based on luck. Alaric erased his messy thoughts and focused his attention on the surroundings. He had Warwick to his left and Galliner to his right, but he didn't want to rely on their protection. He kept his eyes peeled throughout their march. After another 2 hours, they finally saw the mountain where the orcs had settled. Beneath this mountain was an entrance to a cave. It was partially covered by frozen vines, and more than 10 orc warriors were guarding this entrance. Alaric made a hand gesture, signaling the army to dismount quietly. Upon dismounting, he beckoned to Henry, Rigger, and Aldrin. Seeing his signal, the 3 warriors silently approached him. Alaric tapped Henry's shoulder, pointed at the orc warriors guarding the cave entrance, and made a slitting gesture. Henry and the 2 knights understood his intentions. They nodded with serious gazes before they left. Everyone watched as the 3 warriors rushed to the targets without making a sound. In the next moment, they lunged at orc warriors and killed them in just a few seconds. Everything happened so fast that the orc warriors weren't able to call for help. Now that the cave entrance was unguarded, Alaric commanded the army to move forward as quietly as they could. He didn't want the monsters to discover them, or they would have to fight a prepared orc army. With the large difference in their numbers, attacking them by surprise was the best option. This cave is much bigger than I thought, Alaric remarked as soon as they stepped inside the cave. The tunnel leading inside was big enough for 20 men to walk side by side. There was also a unique kind of moss growing on the walls of the cave that emitted weak light, giving them some kind of lighting within the dark passageway. Suddenly, they encountered a group of patrolling orc warriors, but they were quickly put down by the crossbowmen and archers. Su, 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 su. The poor monsters weren't even able to grab their weapons, and they all died in just a blink of an eye. Soon, they arrived at a large cavern where the orcs had built their dwellings. At this moment, a sharp screeching sound echoed throughout the cave. We have been discovered. Alaric frowned. With no time to waste, he gave a series of instructions to the lords. They had already discussed this beforehand, so everyone knew what to do now that it had come to this, to kill as many orcs before they could react to the situation. Under the lead of their lords, the warriors swarmed into the cavern and attacked all the orcs they encountered. Kill these beasts. Kill them all. The orcs were caught off guard by the unexpected invasion. They tried to defend themselves, but most of them were unarmed, so they weren't able to do much against the properly equipped warriors. Alaric watched the carnage with a frown. He noticed that the orcs here were mostly comprised of juveniles and even children. Only a few were adults. Just then, a loud roar reverberated like thunder. Everyone subconsciously turned their gazes. Coming out from the passageway at the opposite side of the cavern were hundreds of orc warriors. They roared with rage when they saw their young being slaughtered. Shield bearers! Forward! Alaric immediately shouted. He had to prevent those orc warriors from piercing through their formation. 100 warriors carrying large shields stepped forward and planted their feet firmly upon taking formation. Brace for impact! Shouted Fredrin, who was leading these men. It was only a few hours since he had participated in the battle to reclaim Alverton, but his face showed no signs of exhaustion. Clang! 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 The shield-bearers grunted after the orc warriors smashed into their defenses. Hold your ground. Don't be afraid. Fredrin's voice drifted into their ears. Hearing his voice, the shield-bearers stubbornly resisted the charging orc warriors. At this moment, the commander assigned to lead the ranged units raised his hand and shouted, "Release your arrows!" Su, 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 su. A barrage of arrows and crossbow bolts was fired, piercing dozens of orc warriors, and leaving them with bloody holes in their bodies. Some orc warriors were killed on the spot, but most of them survived the rain of arrows and crossbow bolts. Everyone witnessed the resilience of the orcs, and this made them unnerved. Now it's our turn. Henry looked at the 200 infantrymen behind him and grinned. Warriors of the north, follow me into battle, the old man shouted while raising his sword into the air. Kill them all. Kill the orcs. The infantrymen were fired up and they looked eager to fight. Charge with me. As soon as Henry gave the command, the shield-bearers created a path for them. Chapter 154. Battle intensifies. With Henry at the front, the infantry unit charged toward the orc warriors, resulting in a brutal clash that killed dozens of orcs. The members of the infantry unit were the most skilled warriors in each household handpicked by Alaric himself. Most of them were only knight apprentices, but their skills in wielding their weapons had already reached a terrifying level. Faced with these skilled warriors, the monsters were so completely outmatched that the orc generals were forced to intervene. Filthy humans! How dare you destroy our home and kill our kind? An orc general roared furiously as it casually killed a soldier with a smash of its huge hammer. Boom! Henry knew that he had to stop this monster quickly to prevent more casualties. With quick strides, he rushed toward the orc general while killing the orc warriors that stood in his path. In just a blink of an eye, numerous orc bodies lie breathlessly in his wake. Sensing his presence, the orc general angrily pounced at him as it swung its gigantic hammer that weighed over a ton. Boom! Henry nimbly evaded and released a flurry of attacks, leaving deep slash wounds on the orc general's arms. Roar! The pain made the monster roar, and in its rage, it wildly swung its hammer around. Boom! 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 However, no matter how hard it tried, it just couldn't catch Henry's shadow. He was like a slippery eel that could always escape from his grasp. Soon, the monster's movement began to slow down as the injuries and fatigue caught up. Henry didn't waste the opportunity. He lunged at the tired beast and stabbed his sword into its thick skull. Normally, the orc general's tough bones could block this sword, but Henry imbued his sword with mana. Like a hot knife cutting through butter, his sword penetrated its skull without obstruction. KKHSSHHKK. The huge beast fell to the ground with a heavy thud. The infantrymen were excited to see him kill the orc general so easily, but before they could even celebrate, more orc generals joined the fray. Upon seeing them appear, Henry raised his hand and signaled for the infantry unit to retreat. Their task was only to kill as many orcs as they could while the main force was preserving their strength. Now that more powerful monsters had appeared, it was his cue to retreat. The shield-bearer unit also noticed this, so they immediately opened a path for Henry's troops. Meanwhile, Alaric, who was at the center of the formation, glanced at Geoffrey and his mercenary group. "It's your turn this time, Sir Geoffrey." Hearing this, Geoffrey solemnly nodded his head. He turned around and shouted at his subordinates. "Did you hear him, brothers?" "Yes, boss," the mercenaries replied. "Let's prove ourselves in this battle." Geoffrey grabbed his weapon, a two-handed polearm with a curved blade at the tip. While raising it in midair, he yelled, "Follow me to kill those monsters. Kill! Kill the orcs!" Their battle cries reverberated through the cavern. In the next moment, they charged through the narrow path opened up by the shield-bearer unit. The orc warriors that had managed to enter this path were ruthlessly decimated by the mercenaries. Some elite knights from the noble houses also participated to help them stop the orc generals. However, unlike Henry, who was able to kill an orc general effortlessly, these elite knights struggled. Even Geoffrey was having a hard time keeping up with the monsters. This time, the battle was almost even and there were casualties on both sides. Unlike the warriors who served the noble houses, the mercenaries could not cope in certain situations. Their battle formations were not properly executed. Alaric watched this battle with a frown. They might have received training from Sir William, but they are still not used to these battle formations. He could see through the weakness of the mercenaries. Standing beside him, William clicked his tongue. "Those ruffians. It looks like I need to increase their training once this is over." Sensing Alaric's gaze, he shook his head. "I have embarrassed myself," my lord. I didn't teach them enough. This is my fault. Alaric tapped the old man's shoulder and smiled faintly. This isn't your fault, Sir William. Those men aren't used to large-scale battles like this. He didn't blame the old man. Besides, Geoffrey's group was doing much better than he had imagined. They just lacked teamwork and coordination. Luckily, the elite knights and warriors sent by the noble houses were able to supplement the weakness in their ranks, so the casualties were not so severe. After more than 20 minutes of intense fighting, only 2 orc generals were killed. Furthermore, 1 elite knight was severely wounded, so Alaric commanded them to retreat and make room for the next unit. The third unit was a force led by 3 houses including House Paxley. Hershey's eldest brother, Theo Paxley, was also a part of this group. As for Baron Nathan, he didn't participate in the battle, since he wasn't a combatant. He just stood at the rear position with the other lords, watching the battle with great anxiety. Relax, Lord Paxley. Lord Theo will be all right. I'm sure your son will be all right. Just trust him. The lords reassured him. Their words lessened his worries. You're right, my lords. As the next lord of House Paxley, I'm sure Theo will come out stronger after this battle, uttered Nathan while clenching his fists. While the lords were cheering him up, another wave of orcs came out from the opposite tunnel. The third unit couldn't handle those monsters on their own, so Alaric sent the last unit earlier than planned. This is bad. The orc lords haven't appeared yet, but our troops are already exhausted. I might have to send the main force soon. The main force was comprised of House Silversword soldiers and the best warriors from each house. Luckily, we are fighting inside this cavern. If this happened outside, we would be overwhelmed by their numbers. Chapter 155. Alaric's Greatest Weakness. As the battle progressed, more and more orcs came out of the opposite tunnel, replacing the dead orc warriors. With the unending number of monsters, the allied army was also starting to accumulate fatigue, and the number of casualties on their side increased. My lord, the mercenary unit has lost 1/3 of their men, and a knight from House Achumber has been killed in battle. A warrior reported the situation with a grim voice. Alaric nodded upon hearing this. The death of those men fell heavily on his shoulders, and as the commander of this army, he had to take responsibility for their deaths. Bring their bodies here, Alaric instructed. What about the half-eaten corpses? The warrior asked hesitantly. Some warriors had been eaten by the enraged orcs, and some were almost unrecognizable. Retrieve what's left of them. If there's no body to retrieve, then bring their armor or weapons. Alaric wasn't new to this. Yes, my lord. The warrior quickly left after getting his instructions. At this moment, the lords were starting to get nervous. More of their warriors had been killed, and they couldn't stomach these losses anymore. My lord, shouldn't we send the main force now? Lord Smith Heinrich cautiously asked. Alaric shook his head without looking at him. It's not time yet. Lord Smith furrowed his eyebrows. The casualties were piling up, and it was starting to affect the overall morale of the troops. Just as he was about to say something, Alaric muttered, I understand your concern, Lord Smith. I know what's going on. However, sending the main force ahead of time won't do us any good. The orc lords haven't joined the battle yet, and we only managed to kill less than 1/5 of their numbers. Lord Smith took a deep breath. Before coming here, Alaric told them about the existence of orc lords in this settlement. If that were true, then things would definitely get more dicey. Lord Smith took a deep breath. With a determined look on his face, he uttered, Then allow me to participate in this battle. He was an elite knight, and a particularly strong one at that. It was apparent in the intense aura he exuded, which even surpassed that of Henry's. Hearing this, Alaric was taken aback. There's no need for you to endanger yourself, my lord. Alaric was against his idea. Baron Smith shook his head. I have made up my mind, my lord. I can't watch this any longer. I have to do something. Alaric stared deeply at him. When he saw the determination in the Baron's eyes, Alaric knew that he couldn't stop him. With a deep sigh, Alaric relented. All right, but you must be careful, my lord. If you sense that something is wrong, then you must retreat immediately. I understand. Baron Smith nodded. I will assign you with the infantry unit. You will serve as the deputy commander and follow Henry's orders. Thank you, my lord. The barons saluted. You may join their formation. Alaric waved his hand, indicating for him to go. Just as he was about to leave, an old voice drifted into their ears. If you're going, then this old man will go too. Alaric and Baron Smith stared at Baron Argus in surprise. They didn't expect that this stubborn old man would actually join the battle. What's wrong? Do you think this old man will hold back you young ones? Argus snorted, seemingly annoyed by the lack of response. Alaric shook his head. Of course not, my lord. But, are you sure? Baron Smith was an elite knight in his prime years, so Alaric wasn't that worried about him. But Baron Argus was another matter. This old man was a peak knight, but he wasn't the formidable warrior that he was anymore. Age had caught up with him, and it had affected his battle prowess. Seeing Alaric's hesitant face, Argus smirked. Look at you hesitating. A commander has to be prepared to sacrifice his men. Lord Alaric, you have a good heart, but that is your greatest weakness. The old man tapped his shoulder and added, remember this. Sometimes, you need to sacrifice 1,000 soldiers to protect 1,000,000 lives. The old man's words resonated deeply in Alaric's heart. In that instant, he remembered the scenes in his past life during the civil war between the Crown Prince and the Second Prince. He had made many questionable decisions that killed his subordinates. He is right. Sometimes sacrifices are necessary. It took a moment to gather his composure. After calming himself, Alaric's eyes flashed with resolve. He stared deeply at the old man and nodded. Since you have already expressed your intention, then I won't hold you back, my lord. You will be the second deputy commander under Sir Henry. Having gained his permission, the old baron grinned and saluted. Thank you, my lord. Please be careful, you two. Alaric reminded them once more. The two barons nodded before they headed toward Henry's infantry unit. Dylan was part of the infantry unit, and when he saw his father reporting to Henry, he was stunned. Dad! As if hearing his voice, Baron Smith turned his head and smiled at him. Dylan was at the center of the formation, and he couldn't leave without permission from his squad leader. He immediately called his superior. Sir Rigger. Rigger raised an eyebrow when he heard someone calling his name, but when he saw that it was Dylan, his face eased up. What is it, Lord Dylan? He had 20 soldiers under him, and Dylan was his deputy squad leader. Sir Rigger, I will leave for a minute. I just need to speak with my father. Dylan uttered with an urgent tone. Rigger followed his gaze and saw Baron Smith chatting with Henry. All right, but you must hurry. Thank you, sir. Dylan was overjoyed. After saluting Rigger, he rushed to his father's side. Daim. My lord, what are you doing here? Dylan stared at his father with an inquisitive look. Chapter 156. Title at the end. What else? To fight those monsters, of course. Baron Smith chuckled lightheartedly. Unlike Dylan, who was full of anxiety, the Baron seemed to be completely relaxed. I know that, but why? You don't need to place yourself in danger. Dylan stared at his father with a worried look. Baron Smith's expression turned serious as he shook his head. He then pointed at the ongoing battle and uttered in a solemn tone. The situation is urgent, and if nothing is done, there will be more casualties. Dylan, as the future Lord of Redunia, there are times when you will be forced to make a choice. Will you save yourself, or will you save your people? The Baron tapped his son's shoulder. Go back to your position. We will be fighting soon. Baron Smith didn't give him the time to respond and left without looking back. Dylan could only watch his father leave with a mixture of emotions. Lord Dylan. Rigger's familiar voice pulled him from his thoughts. He turned around and saw Rigger, his squad leader, beckoning, urging him to return. Dylan took a deep breath before he returned to his squad. At this moment, the first row of the shield-bearer unit collapsed from exhaustion while they were covering the retreat of the combat unit. Seeing this, Henry quickly signaled his troops to move forward. Don't push yourselves too hard. Just use the bare minimum of mana and always stay close to your squad. Henry's voice drifted into everyone's ears. The timely response of the infantry unit prevented the further collapse of the shield-bearer unit. The battle raged on. Henry's troops did their best to keep the orc warriors at bay, but everyone was already exhausted and they didn't have enough time to rest. The warriors could no longer bring out their full strength since they were overcome with fatigue. The two barons, Argus and Smith Heinrich, took on more monsters to lessen the burden on the troops. Suddenly, on the opposite side of the tunnel, a slender, red-skinned orc appeared. On its right hand was a bone sword that seemed to be made using the spine of an unknown creature. As soon as the red-skinned orc appeared, the atmosphere abruptly changed. The orcs became more aggressive. An orc lord! Henry's face fell upon seeing this monster. He had seen a similar monster in Alverton during the first orc attack. It was so powerful that it took the combined effort of a few peak elite knights to take it down. Even Sir Galliner and Sir Warwick were severely wounded after fighting a monster like this. Fighting it alone is no different than suicide. Sweat trickled down his face as he observed the monster's movements. "You can't fight it on your own," a voice echoed behind him. "Lord Smith." Henry stared at the Baron in surprise. Smith Heinrich nodded to him and muttered, "Sir Henry, the main force should be on the move now that this monster has appeared, but we must buy them some time. Otherwise, our warriors will become its prey." "I understand. Then please assist me, my lord. Let's try our best to hold back that monster." Henry knew that he was right. "I was waiting for you to say that." Smith chuckled. In the next moment, the orc lord suddenly appeared before them, brandishing its bone sword, causing a sharp whistling sound in the air. Whoosh! Henry narrowed his eyes. He had been keeping watch on the monster, so he immediately sensed its attack. He lifted his sword and parried the monster's bone sword. Clang! Sparks flew in all directions as their weapons collided. After that initial clash, the two released a flurry of stabs and slashes. Clang! 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 Henry's arms felt numb with every collision. Even with mana imbued in his arms and legs, the pressure still placed a great deal of stress on his body. He could feel the blood rising from his throat, but he forced it back down. Meanwhile, Baron Smith Heinrich didn't just stand there and watch. He joined the battle and provided Henry with assistance, keeping the orc lord from seriously injuring the old man. Sir Henry is already tired and his mana output is starting to fall. Smith Heinrich thought to himself in the middle of the battle. While they were fighting with the orc lord, more red-skinned orcs came out of the opposite tunnel. Roar! An ear-piercing roar suddenly echoed across the cavern as 5 more orc lords arrived. "There's 5 more of them?" Henry exclaimed, terror gripping his heart. An orc lord was stronger than a peak elite knight and they were already having trouble fighting with one. Now 5 such monsters had appeared. "Sir Henry, be careful." Smith's alarmed voice drifted into his ears and in the next moment, he felt as if a large boulder had crushed into his body. Bang! Henry was thrown like a rag doll and was glued into the cavern wall after smashing heavily. Smith Heinrich stared at the culprit. It was an orc lord, but unlike the monster they had fought earlier, this one was twice as big. It was even bigger than an orc general that was known for its massive size. This one is stronger than the slender orc lord. Its aura is more intense too. Smith Heinrich's face darkened. This was no longer something that he could deal with. With just a glance, he could tell that this particular orc lord was at the transcendent level. Whoosh! The huge orc lord appeared in front of him like a ghost. The Baron widened his eyes in horror and before he could react, the monster grabbed his shoulder, its large hand gripping onto him like an iron clamp. Arg! Smith Heinrich struggled and tried to break away from its grip. He lifted his sword and stabbed toward the orc lord's arm, but the beast destroyed his sword with a punch. He didn't give up. He repeatedly punched and kicked the monster's arm, but it was of no use. Enraged by his actions, the orc lord slammed his body to the ground. Bang! Chapter 157. The Powerful Main Force. Dad! Dylan's eyes went bloodshot when he witnessed this scene. He abandoned his squad and rushed toward his father. "Lord Dylan, get back here. It's dangerous there." Rigger's voice fell on deaf ears. Dylan was consumed with rage and despair. The only thing on his mind right now was to save his father. He ignored everything else and charged recklessly through the enemy lines. More than 10 orc warriors tried to stop him, but they fell with a few swings of his long sword. Whoosh! Whoosh! The orc warriors couldn't stop the enraged Dylan. In just the blink of an eye, he had killed over 15 orc warriors. However, just when he thought that he could go unhindered, a huge figure blocked his path. He looked up and saw the towering presence of an orc general. It was holding a weapon that looked like a club. Just the thought of getting smashed by this club made Dylan shiver. He forcefully shook off his fear and lunged at the large monster, brandishing his long sword with all his might. Whoosh! The orc general sneered at his futile attempt. It lifted its huge weapon to casually block his long sword. Clang! After blocking his sword, the orc general punched Dylan with its left fist. Boom! The punch sent him flying and his body smashed into an orc's clay abode. The old baron, Argus, frowned upon seeing how they had been ruthlessly beaten by the monsters. With Henry's and Smith's fate unknown, as the next highest commanding officer, Argus was forced to lead the infantry unit. Bring our injured comrades and retreat immediately, Argus barked at the warriors. He gave a series of commands, making sure that everything was in order. His timely response prevented further confusion and the infantry unit was able to retreat without much casualties. Argus went to grab Henry and Smith Heinrich. Damn it! This is the fastest I've run in my entire life. He cursed in his heart as he carried the 2 unconscious elite knights into safety. They are still breathing, but their pulse is weak. They need immediate treatment. He frowned when he sensed the terrible condition of the 2 warriors. Just then, a shadow suddenly appeared in front of him, blocking his path. Argus took an abrupt halt as he stared at the towering red-skinned orc lord. This was the beast that had taken down 2 powerful elite knights. No matter how confident he was with his skills, there was no way he could surmount realms to fight this monster. The overwhelming aura of the orc lord made him shake from head to foot. He couldn't even move his feet anymore, as if there was an invisible force that pinned him in place. The orc lord tilted its head, revealing a chilling smile. In the next moment, it swung its fist toward the old baron while emitting a burst of strange laughter. Whoosh! Just when he thought that they would be killed, he saw a familiar figure appearing beside the orc lord. Sir Galliner. The orc lord also sensed the arrival of a formidable foe, but it was a second late to react. Galliner's kick struck its face, sending it crashing to the wall. Bang! Retreat immediately. Leave the rest to us. Galliner sent the old baron a deep look before he rushed in the orc lord's direction. Baron Argus heaved a deep sigh. Without looking back, he went to grab Dylan, who had also fallen unconscious, before he retreated into safety with the infantry unit. Baron Argus grabbed a medical practitioner and pointed at the 3 people he had saved. Please prioritize these 3. They are gravely wounded. The medical expert was stunned after being suddenly yanked, but when he saw that it was the old baron, he forcefully swallowed his anger. I'll see what I can do, my lord. Argus nodded with a grave look. He then turned his head. The main force had already clashed with the orcs and a brutal slaughter followed. Under Alaric's leadership, the main force destroyed all the orcs in their path, piercing through the enemy formation with unstoppable momentum. That old man. Argus squinted his eyes as he looked at the old man who was currently fighting 2 orc lords. Sir William? How is this possible? His eyes widened in shock and disbelief. He had heard about William's recovery, but there was no news about his advancement to Transcendent. Wait, there's another Transcendent. Baron Argus stared at Warwick, who was also fighting against 2 orc lords. Sir Warwick is a Transcendent too? Just how many Transcendents do they have? Lord Lucas, Sir Galliner, Sir Warwick, and if Sir William is included, they have 4 Transcendents. Insane. It wasn't just him. The lords of the noble houses were also flabbergasted. They all thought that Galliner was the only Transcendent after Lucas. Lord Nathan's eyes twinkled after they had revealed their powers. This further solidified his desire to latch onto the coattails of House Silversword. Honor? Who cares about honor? Can that be eaten? Lord Nathan clenched his fists as he watched the battle unfold. The main force displayed their strength. Coupled with the rage that they had been suppressing earlier, they brought out a terrifying force that rendered the orc warriors unable to defend themselves. Even the orc generals weren't any better. The powerful elite knights from each noble house furiously attacked the monsters. Meanwhile, Alaric was at the forefront of the formation, showing the courage of a true commander. Looking at his back, the warriors felt invigorated and the morale was sky-high. With Galliner and the other two holding back the orc lords, there is nothing that can stop us from massacring these orcs. Alaric thought to himself, but for some reason, his instincts were giving him signals. As if a far more terrifying beast was hiding inside the cave. I hope I'm wrong. He tried to convince himself, but he knew that his instincts had never been wrong. Chapter 158. Title at the end. It looks like I don't need to use my stat points for the time being. Alaric still had over 140 unused stat points. He had been keeping them in case of emergencies. My lord, why don't you leave the front to us? You should get some rest. An elite knight from another household suggested with a look of concern. I'm fine. Besides, my presence in front is necessary. Alaric calmly responded. Look behind you. Do you know why they are fighting so hard even with all these enemies around us? The elite knight quietly stared at him while listening to his words. It's because I'm here. As long as I stand in front of this formation, those warriors will never retreat. Alaric uttered before his figure blurred and reappeared next to an orc general. With a rotating slash, the orc general's head flew and its towering body fell to the ground with a heavy thud. Unreal, the elite knight mumbled when he saw Alaric effortlessly killing such a powerful monster. With Alaric's dominant performance, the warriors of the main force were thrilled. The excitement positively affected everyone, boosting their confidence and fighting spirit. As more orcs were killed, Alaric's instincts started kicking in once more. It was screaming at him as if telling him about an incoming danger. In the next second, the cavern suddenly trembled, and a deep, booming voice echoed. Humans! You have enraged this king! An oppressive pressure abruptly descended that almost forced everyone to kneel. Alaric's eyes constricted when he sensed the aura coming out from the opposite tunnel. It was heavy, appalling, and filled with bloodlust. A large hand grabbed the edges of the opposite tunnel, and soon, a huge figure twice the size of an orc general came out. It had a mixture of red and dark purplish skin covering its humongous body. On top of its head was a pair of long, curved horns that were as sharp as swords. There were also black scales on its arms and legs that looked like steel plates. As soon as this creature emerged, Alaric widened his eyes in disbelief. Orc King. There's actually an Orc King here. There were cases when Orc Lords evolved into much stronger beings, but this took a long time and a large number of sacrifices. In every 1 million orcs, only one Orc King appears. That was how rare they were. This was a peak disaster grade monster, a creature close to becoming a calamity grade. The latter were monsters that could threaten several cities if not contained immediately. Sir Galliner, Sir Warwick, Sir William, Alaric called out with a grim expression. The three transcendents abandoned their targets and rushed to his side after hearing his call. My lord, we await your orders. Alaric stared deeply at the Orc King and uttered. Change of plans. You three will attack the Orc King. We will handle the Orc Lords. This was the only option for them since no one else could fight the Orc King other than transcendents. I obey. Galliner nodded without complaint. Yes, my lord, answered Warwick after taking a deep breath. Meanwhile, William hesitated for a moment before he nodded. I will do my best. Alaric gave them one last look before he made a hand gesture, signaling for them to make a move. Seeing his signal, the three transcendent knights immediately rushed toward the Orc King. Meanwhile, Alaric issued a series of commands to the squad leaders. He also sent a messenger to inform the resting units to offer assistance. This could be the final battle, so they had to use everything that they had. I have to use my stat points now, but which attribute should I increase? His mind spun as he thought about which one to choose. My strength is still lacking compared to an orc lord, but it's not what I need right now. This could be a prolonged battle, so having a higher stamina is a must. My mana needs to be upgraded too. But what about my agility? Having faster reflexes could help me react better to any situation. While wrestling with his thoughts, the orc lords had already recovered, and they were approaching the main force with unimaginable speed. Alaric no longer bothered to think. He quickly distributed his stat points to the attributes that he believed would be useful. Strength, 150, 170. Stamina, 150, 180. Agility, 150, 180. Endurance, 150, 160.
Mana, 174, 228.
Stat points, 144, 0. He felt a bit annoyed that he had to use his stat points on his mana, but there was nothing he could do. Mana was very crucial in this situation, and having more to spare could be a huge factor. After increasing his attributes, Alaric lunged at the most dangerous orc lord, intending to fight it by himself. It was the orc lord that took out Henry and Smith Heinrich. Facing this monster, Alaric didn't dare to be careless. He pulled the dark diamond shield while wielding the rare steel sword in his strong hand. In the next moment, a violent shockwave burst forth as Alaric and the orc lord clashed. Ha! Alaric grunted as he blocked the orc lord's punch. Its strength made his left arm go numb, but he endured the pain. He planted his feet firmly so he wouldn't be knocked down. The ground beneath him fractured from the impact and his legs almost buckled. The orc lord stared at him in surprise, not expecting a weak human to withstand its punch. Interesting. You aren't a transcendent, but you managed to block my punch. The orc lord revealed a twisted smile while staring at him with curiosity. Alaric ignored its muttering. He retreated backward while keeping his eyes on the monster. The orc lord licked its lips and laughed wickedly. I wonder what you'll taste like. Kakik. Alaric felt a chill in his heart. Chapter 159. Galliner against the Orc King. Alaric calmed his nerves. The monster was powerful, but with the dark diamond shield mitigating most of the damage, he could barely keep up with it. Even with all the upgrades he made to his attributes, it was still insufficient. After all, this particular orc lord was at the level of transcendence. Without the dark diamond shield and the rare steel sword, he wouldn't be able to last long against the monster. This was an undeniable truth. The orc lord's laughter ceased and it suddenly appeared in front of him. Whoosh! Alaric saw a huge fist coming his way, so he instinctively lifted the shield to protect his body. Bang! However, he was sent flying this time. It's starting to get serious. The punch was a lot stronger than when it first attacked him. He even felt his bones cracking after blocking that blow. Alaric twisted his body in mid-air to stabilize himself before he landed on the ground. With a grave look, he stared at the orc lord. The creature flashed a taunting smile as if mocking him for his weakness and futile efforts. Without that shield, you are nothing, the orc lord uttered. The disdain in its voice was evident. Faced with its mockery, Alaric snorted. He imbued his body with mana to provide more protection for himself. This was rapidly decreasing his mana, but Alaric didn't care. Just one direct hit from the monster could kill him, so he would rather use his mana for additional protection. He then poured more mana into his sword, activating its hidden power. With a forceful slash, an invisible sword wave shot toward the orc lord, slicing through the air. Whoosh! Alaric felt the sharp decline in his mana after he had released that slash. Normally, only Transcendent Knights could pull off this move, but the rare steel sword allowed him to use this ability. The smile on the orc lord's face vanished when it sensed the approaching danger. It grabbed the ground, peeled off a large chunk of stone, and threw it in Alaric's direction. Bang! The invisible sword wave smashed into the large stone, breaking it into smithereens. The stone managed to weaken the sword wave and the residual force struck the orc lord, leaving a deep, long laceration on its chest. Roar! The orc lord was furious. With quick and heavy strides, it lunged at Alaric and swung its muscular arm with a terrifying force that split the air. It moved so fast for its size, and it had even exceeded Alaric's speed. Out of options, Alaric could only imbue more mana into his arms. He held his breath and mentally prepared himself for the impact. Bang! Like a kite with a broken string, Alaric was sent flying toward the opposite side of the cavern. He slammed into the wall and was pinned for 2 seconds before he fell to the ground. My lord! Lord Alaric! Everyone was horrified when they saw this, but they were also occupied in their battles, so no one could lend him a hand. Cough! Cough! Alaric spat a mouthful of blood as he rose to his feet. He felt his insides shaking and contorting with pain that made him grimace. Sensing the wavering spirits of the troops, Alaric immediately shouted, "Keep your eyes on your enemies. I can handle things here." His words provided everyone with some comfort, but they knew that it was only a matter of time before Alaric would be taken down by the monster. Meanwhile, the 3 Transcendents were also having a hard time fighting with the Orc King. The 3 formidable warriors were now covered in wounds. Galanor took a step forward and muttered, "You two go and help Lord Alaric. I will buy as much time as I can." His words stunned the 2 Transcendents. "Sir Galanor, fighting this monster on your own is dangerous," uttered Warwick with a frown. "I know, but Lord Alaric's safety is our top priority. You must not hesitate, Sir Warwick. Go!" Galanor didn't wait for them to respond and charged at the Orc King with his 2-handed heavy sword. Seeing this, Warwick and William no longer hesitated. They turned around and rushed to aid Alaric. After they left, Galanor clashed with the Orc King head-on. Now that he was left alone to fight the peak disaster-grade monster, the pressure on his shoulders intensified. Because of his naturally stronger body, he somehow managed to withstand the onslaught of attacks. More and more wounds appeared on his body, making him drenched in his own blood. However, Galanor was like a stubborn pine tree that remained firm even in the face of the fearsome storm. With unwavering determination and extraordinary willpower, he fought relentlessly, refusing to back down. With their every clash, an earth-shattering shockwave followed. Boom! 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 The Orc King was starting to get annoyed as the battle progressed. The human was like a resilient cockroach that was so difficult to kill. Even with its full might, it couldn't force the human transcendent to retreat. The Orc King stared at the human warrior and uttered in a deep voice, "Human, why struggle? I can let you go on account of your courage to face this king by yourself." Hearing the monster's words, Galanor wiped the blood that blocked his vision as he uttered with contempt, "Shut your filthy mouth." Veins protruded on the Orc King's face. "I gave you a chance." Its cold voice drifted into Galanor's ears, and in the next moment, it abruptly reappeared on his left. Whoosh! Seeing the incoming fist, Galanor used his 2-handed heavy sword as a shield. Bang! As the monster's fist struck his weapon, the blade shattered into pieces and its fist continued unimpeded, striking hard into Galanor's chest. Arg! Galanor grimaced when he felt his ribs cracking from that blow. However, he ignored the pain and grabbed the monster's arm, twisting it into an unnatural angle. The Orc King's elbow made a popping sound as its joints snapped from the forceful twist. Chapter 160. Like a broken piñata. The Orc King's face darkened and it roared furiously as the pain registered. Roar! It grabbed Galanor and tried to pull him away, but the latter was like an octopus, tightly clinging to its arm, refusing to let go. Feeling enraged, it swung its arm and rained punches into Galanor's body. However, instead of letting go, Galanor grabbed even tighter and used all the strength he could muster to yank off its arm. Soon, the tearing of flesh echoed as the Orc King's right arm was forcefully pulled apart by Galanor. Roar! The Orc King's eyes turned bloodshot. It opened its gaping mouth and bit into Galanor's shoulder. As its sharp teeth sank deeply into his flesh, Galliner shivered from the intense pain. Arg! Blood and sweat trickled down his face, obscuring his vision. The Orc King tore a huge chunk of flesh from his shoulder before it grabbed him and tossed him to the ground. "I like the taste of your flesh," the monster uttered after swallowing down the flesh it had torn off. Galliner stood up with great difficulty. His shoulder was bleeding profusely, so he immediately used his mana to stop the bleeding. "I stopped the bleeding, but this is only a temporary solution. I won't be able to hold on for long." His weapon was broken and he could hardly stand on his feet. Galliner raised his head and looked at the approaching monster with a deep frown. It was staring at him with a twisted smile on its hideous face. Taking a deep breath, Galliner adjusted his stance and prepared himself for another round of battle. "Come at me!" Meanwhile, William and Warwick rushed to support Alaric. "My lord, we are here to help you." The two Transcendents attacked the muscular Orc Lord, giving it no room to breathe. The monster might be powerful, but facing the fury of the two experienced Transcendents, it received a brutal punishment. William and Warwick took turns stabbing into its body. KHHSKKK! KHHSKKK! The Orc Lord tried to fight back, but the more wounds it took, the weaker it had become. Its speed had noticeably slowed down, making things easier for the two Transcendents. In just 2 minutes, the arrogant monster staggered backward before it collapsed to the ground. Blood continuously leaked out of the holes in its body, slowly taking away its life. Soon, the Orc Lord's breathing ceased. "Are you all right, my lord?" Warwick rushed to Alaric's side and inspected him from head to foot. Alaric's body was still screaming in pain, but he acted like he was fine to prevent them from worrying. He waved his hand and said, "Go and help the others. I'm fine." Hearing his words, Warwick nodded. "Yes, my lord." The situation was urgent, so the two Transcendents didn't waste any time and left to take care of the remaining Orc Lords. After they left, Alaric searched for the Orc King. He saw that Galliner was still fighting with the monster, but when he saw the Transcendent's condition, Alaric's face fell. "Galliner!" He moved his feet and rushed in their direction. "Sir Galliner!" Alaric called out as he threw his rare steel sword and the dark diamond shield toward his direction. Seeing this, Galliner jumped and caught them in midair. He could feel the potent power of the sword and the shield as he held them in his hands. When he injected them with mana, the inscriptions lit up, bursting forth with incredible power. Fear flashed in the Orc King's eyes when it sensed the power coming from the equipment. At that moment, the monster thought about fleeing, but before it could escape, Galliner lunged forward while brandishing the rare steel sword. A bigger, more powerful sword wave was released and shot toward the Orc King. Whoosh! A snapping sound echoed as the sword wave cut through the air. Alarmed by the frightening force that was approaching it, the Orc King evaded with a quick turn of its body. The sword wave struck the cavern wall and caused a violent explosion. Bang! The cave shook from the impact and cracks started to form on the ceiling. With a few more such attacks, the cave might collapse. For the first time in its life, the Orc King felt a wave of terror. Its beastly eyes trembled as it stared at the dauntless human warrior. Galliner charged toward the monster while imbuing more mana into the rare steel sword. The Orc King didn't just stand there and wait for him. It gathered mana on its left arm, enlarging it to an unnatural size. Subsequently, a fierce collision followed as the rare steel sword struck the hardened black scales of the monster's arm. Clang! Boom! Galliner's hair danced wildly as a violent shockwave erupted across the cave. "My mana is almost drained. I need to end things quickly." His face turned pale as he injected more mana into the sword. The Orc King noticed this and it immediately bombarded him with heavy punches. Bang! 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 Galliner used the dark diamond shield to block its attacks. Powered by his mana, the shield was able to absorb most of the force, so he was able to withstand its barrage of attacks. Bang! If you want access to fast updates or the full novel in high-quality audio, contact me now and buy. I offer over 300 complete audiobooks from Pocket FM, Webnovel, Audible, and more. No locked episodes, no subscriptions. Just one-time payment via PayPal or Ko-fi. Message me directly on Telegram or WhatsApp, or check out the full list of available novels on Discord. Start listening to your next favorite audiobook today.